Hi, my name is Tara, and I want to welcome you to the View from Israel podcast. The View from Israel was born on the Black Sabbath of October 7, 2023, from the need to present valid and confirmed information to the public. Our social media hashtag is View from Israel. Our podcast is available in all major podcast directories. Our free newsletter is on Substack and comes out approximately 5 times a week. We are not associated with any political movement or outside institution or company. Our entire budget comes from advertisements in our podcasts and newsletters, videos, memberships, and donations. At The View from Israel, we believe silence is no longer an option. We are guided by one primary principle. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Now, let us go to our podcast episode.
Over the past few weeks, a raging battle has occurred on the world-renowned Substack site. If you are unfamiliar with Substack, it is home to tens of thousands of writers, producing newsletters of all types. The View from Israel newsletter is situated there, and on our website. This battle began when one famous writer on Substack, Jonathan Katz, had a piece of his published in the Atlantic magazine, entitled, "Substack Has a Nazi Problem." The subtitle of this newsletter tells the story. It reads as follows. The newsletter platform lacks content moderation, creates an opening for white nationalists, eager to get their message out. The moment that piece was published, a war began on Substack, and has now spilled over to other social networks. Then, a few hundred Substack writers, with formidable numbers of subscribers, signed a letter to the Substack board entitled, Substackers Against Nazis, a collective letter to Substack leadership. Before delving deeper into this subject, for full disclosure, I, like many others, released a post in my newsletter of the signed letter. Substackers Against Nazis. I also requested my name be put on that list of signatories. That is so you know exactly where I stand on this issue. Yet I will be honest. It is not as black and white as it sounds. I will read this letter to you in a few minutes. This podcast episode, which is also in print, discusses the nature of the debate between advocates for complete and total free speech and those insisting a line must be drawn. It is about where we draw the line between free speech and censorship. Here is the full text of the Substackers Against Nazis letter, which I did sign and post in the View from Israel newsletter. It addresses the owners and board of directors of Substack. Dear Chris, Hamish, and Jaraj, we're asking a very simple question that has somehow been made complicated. Why are you platforming and monetizing Nazis? According to a piece written by Substack publisher Jonathan M. Katz and published by The Atlantic on November 28, this platform has a Nazi problem. As Katz wrote, some Substack newsletters by Nazis and white nationalists have thousands or tens of thousands of subscribers, making the platform a new and valuable tool for creating mailing lists for the far right. And many accept paid subscriptions through Substack, seemingly flouting terms of service that ban attempts to publish content or fund initiatives that incite violence based on protected classes. Substack, which takes a 10% cut of subscription revenue, makes money when readers pay for Nazi newsletters. As Patrick Casey, a leader of a now-defunct neo-Nazi group, who is banned on nearly every other social platform, except Substack, wrote on here in 2021. I'm able to live comfortably, doing something I find enjoyable and fulfilling. The cause isn't going anywhere. Several Nazis and white supremacists, including Richard Spencer, not only have paid subscriptions turned on, but have received Substack bestseller badges, indicating that they are making at a minimum thousands of dollars a year. From our perspective as Substack publishers, it is unfathomable that someone with a swastika avatar, who writes about the Jewish question, or who promotes great replacement theory, could be given the tools to succeed on your platform. And yet, you've been unable to adequately explain your position. In the past, you have defended your decision to platform bigotry by saying you make decisions based on principles, not PR, and will stick to our hands-off approach to content moderation. But there's a difference between a hands-off approach and putting your thumb on the scale. We know you moderate some content, including spam sites and newsletters written by sex workers. Why do you choose to promote and allow the monetization of sites that traffic in white nationalism? Your unwillingness to play by your own rules on this issue has already led to the announced departures of several prominent Substackers, including Rusty Foster and Helena Fitzgerald. They follow previous exoduses of writers, including Substack Pro recipient Grace Lavery and Jude Ellison S. Doyle, who left with similar concerns. As journalist Casey Newton told his more than 166,000 Substack subscribers after Katz's piece came out, the correct number of newsletters using Nazi symbols that you host and profit from on your platform should be 0. We, your publishers, want to hear from you on the official Substack newsletter. Is platforming Nazis part of your vision of success? Let us know. From there we can each decide if this is still where we want to be. Sign, Substackers Against Nazis. That is the end of the letter. Yet again, I will be honest. It is not as black and white as it sounds. For days now, I have been reading many of the posts and notes put up by both sides on this subject. I have also watched as this has spilled over into social media. It is not a pretty sight, to say the least. Some articles and notes on both sides are very well thought out. Some are inane dribbling of Jew haters, or just for the sake of attacking someone on either side. But that is to be expected. Some are simple clickbait, and some try to express a point of view. Some have an axe to grind, and others want their well-thought-out opinions in print. Some attack individuals, and some defend their stance, without attacking a person or entity. Let me repeat. That goes for both sides of the fence. I commented very few times, though there were moments that I will admit my fingers started itching, like they do on X. In the end, I realized that what I wanted to comment on were the attention seekers and clickbait. Along my journey, I met one or two individuals who were not on my side of the fence, yet they proved that a respectful and intelligent conversation about the topic could occur. I met others, of course, who agreed with me, and they were awesome as well. So, along this journey of reading, which goes on even today, I realized that a few significant points are being ignored. Or at least, that is the way it seems to me. Indeed, I am beginning to see the argument veering away from the underlying focal point into an attack fest, or who can find the most disgusting photographs of Hitler and the Nazis that exist. I am waiting for the idiot who thinks it is funny to put up photos of concentration camp prisoners. It would not surprise me. This is not about Katz or his reasons, nor the Atlantic and their reasons. This is an attempt to have an earnest discussion of what, if any, are the limits of free speech. I am purposefully leaving out names here, except for the original author of the Atlantic article. I do not know him, though I agree with his underlying premise. This does not mean I agree with every word he wrote. If you wish to read the original article, just type in Google, Katz Atlantic Magazine Substack newsletter. Of course, due to the very topic, it has gone to Jews, Israel, Hamas, and all the rest. Now, there seems to be an entire mix-up between those who want to attack Israel and the Jews, and those who want to defend them. I do not have to tell you who is on which side. Or at least I hope I don't. Let me remind all of you that the Nazis, along with the Japanese, began World War II. And please, I beg of you, leave your comments attempting to teach me the nuances of history out of your replies. I am, as well, a student of history, especially that era. And I know all the arguments on how World War II actually began. Nevertheless, when push comes to shove, the Nazis, on September 1, 1939, fired the opening salvo. Why do I mention this? Because 7 years later, 35 million people would be dead. 35 million people. So, this does not only affect the Jews. Calling names, or using the term Nazi, for shock value is not something new to me. And I honestly could not care less if you have one reader for your publication or 100,000 paying you as a subscription fee. It has no place in such an argument. At its core, this discussion is about the limits that should be put on free speech, if any. And yes, it is a dangerous, slippery slope, as the cliché goes. Limits on free speech, especially to the American mind, is an anathema. Some use the term Nazi for shock, others out of pure hate. But when everything is words within pixels, who can tell? Does the individual who posted a zillion pictures of Nazis in his post think that it is free speech, or is it hate of Jews, love of Nazis, or just a way to express his anger? I do not know, nor can anyone else, except for the original writer. So, let us be honest here. Free speech is a gift. A wonderful, beautiful gift. It is an inherent right of the Western mind, and we are blessed with it. Remember, most of the world is not endowed with such rights. They live in areas where free speech will get you killed or jailed. Free speech also comes with responsibility. And I fear it is that responsibility that is being ignored and pushed to the side. There are calls to action, names, and epitaphs that enflame the mob. They give it strength. And suddenly, what was once speech crosses a line and becomes action. That is the danger. Not Substack. Not the writer of the original article. The danger lies in the use of the term Nazi, becoming acceptable. And once that is acceptable, and the norm, then the crimes the Nazis committed are no longer so heinous in the mind. Many sick minds can even defend them. This, and again, it is my personal opinion, is the underlying danger. When does free speech endanger freedom itself? That is the ultimate question. When does free speech endanger freedom itself? Not whether or not Substack does, or says anything, not whether the writer is true to his words, or just a two-faced, cynical attention grabber. On that I could not care less. The heart of this argument is whether free speech, or some aspects of it, does not end with just words. We all know that yelling fire in a movie theater, where no such fire exists, is against the law. Why? Because it will cause a riot, and people may get killed running for the exits. But my yelling fire is me exercising free speech. What others do, how it affects anyone else, is not my problem. After all, they can stay seated and continue watching the movie. So why will I get arrested for screaming fire in a crowded movie theater? Let's take another example. If your neighbor's child came over to you and told you that tomorrow they are going to shoot up their school and kill as many people as they can, you would, if you have any sense of morality, call the police immediately. Your finger would dial 911 so fast, you would not even think about free speech. Yet, it was that child's free speech. And in this case, the child has done nothing as of yet. That child just expressed a desire to do something heinous. But still, you would call the police. Why? Because you are preventing a horrendous act that may happen in the future. So, let us not be disingenuous. We all agree that free speech does have limitations. That limitation is when it is used in a manner that can cause harm or death to others. So, let us be honest here. So, on one hand, we have this beautiful gift, which we consider an inherent right. On the other hand, we must all admit that grave responsibilities come with this gift. If you disagree, may I suggest you leave your ivory tower for a quick walk around town? We also can agree, I hope, that using racist epitaphs is disgusting. I don't care about your religion, race, or creed. It is vile, heinous, and unforgivable. Racial slurs may be considered by many as free speech, but anyone who has spent 5 minutes studying history knows precisely where that road leads. The term Nazi is not the problem. It can be used in many ways, and is way too overused these days, taking the crime's power away from the term. But what the actual term, Nazi, represents is the problem. The true meaning of someone supporting a Nazi. It is a word, or phrase if you will, that brings to mind some of the most horrendous crimes against humanity. The Nazis, specifically Joseph Goebbels, invented the doctrine of the lie. The Nazis knew all too well how to use speech to inflame the masses. Those same masses did not, in any way, shape, manner, or form, have any free speech. Yet the Nazis were masters at it. They used it to manipulate and cause entire populations to accomplish horrible, despicable acts that were unimaginable just 10 years beforehand. Yet if someone on Substack or X or anywhere else wants to use the term, it is, without doubt, their right to do so. It is their right and their responsibility to bear. I do not argue with that in any way. Yet I do know what happens when free speech so easily crosses the boundaries into action. I know exactly what happens when fire is yelled out in that crowded theater, or the neighbor chooses not to call the police. Speech, words, and terms are a funny thing. Everyone who writes knows this to be a fact. How often have you written something that you thought was incredibly clear, only to have someone interpret your words in a manner you never intended, or even thought of? Maybe you are incredible, but that has happened to me, and others too often. And I am sure it will happen with this piece, and podcast as well. People hear what they want to hear. They read what they want to read. They ignore the message, if they can find some way to interpret it within their own outlook. Arguing this while sitting behind our desks, in our ivory towers, is also disingenuous. Speech, all speech, has consequences. Call someone fat, or ugly, and you will immediately see the effect it has. It is not just what you write and say, but what you say or write when it affects others. You want to convince. You want to make your point of view heard. All this is legitimate and should be done, without question. And if what you say is a call for action or the terms you use enflame the mob, then your free speech is now invading my free space. And that is not free speech. It is those flying that banner, becoming dictatorial in their application of their free speech. They have the right to it. I, on the other hand, do not. Don't believe me? Look at the number of posts attacking others for their point of view when the poster waves the banner for free speech. The original poster has no such right, because it disagrees with the enlightened among us, who believe free speech has no boundaries. So, Nazi can connote many things. But if it is used in a manner to inflame others, no, I'm afraid I have to disagree, and you have no right to do it. I cannot agree that bringing up the death of 6 million Jews, or 35 million people killed in World War II, because of the Nazis, just to inflame the mob, is your right to free speech. It is you, threatening to shoot up the school. I cannot agree that if you put up pictures of Hitler, to inflame and get clicks, it is a valid expression of free speech. You see, from where I sit, after October 7th, and yes, our lives have become before and after to my great sorrow. Watching just as horrendous hate speech as the Nazis used, and even worse, which I did not think possible before October 7th. With marches calling to gas the Jews, and anti-Semitic attacks up in the hundreds of %. Jewish students being physically attacked on campus, religious symbols being destroyed and torn down. People walking down the major avenues in New York City, and Australia, and New Zealand, and the UK, screaming "fuck the Jews," and pulling down kidnapped posters with no police intervention. Others pulling down the American flag all over the United States, and putting the Palestinian one in its place, and then burning the American flag, as if they were in an anti-Vietnam War rally, chanting by the tens of thousands from the river to the sea, a statement straight out of Bin Laden's open letter to America, if you bother to read it, and no matter how you put it, that is a call for genocide. If there ever was one. And on it goes, all in the name of free speech. That type of free speech is eerily reminiscent of the days before Kristallnacht. That free speech leads to much worse. The road from screaming out "gas the Jews" to that of hurting or killing people is very short. That type of free speech, that allowance of saying anything, anytime, to anyone, will, without doubt, and I say this with 100% assurance, lead to vile actions. People will be harmed and killed. The term Nazi is a wake-up call. It is not the crux of this problem. The problem is much deeper, the rot much worse. As I have told some friends on the other side of this argument, and we have civil and enlightening discussions about this problem, I fully admit I do not have an answer for those defending free speech. I do see their point. But history should teach you something. And current events as well. Beware. The exercise of free speech must come with responsibility. If it does not, and everything goes, then it will develop into mayhem and chaos. And that chaos will cause physical consequences. And then, that free speech will lead to horrific acts. Again, I do not have all the answers. But I do know where this leads. And I can tell you this. It won't only be about Jews then. It will be about anyone who does not fit someone's worldview. So be my guest. Use Nazi wherever you like. Throw out all the gas to Jews, and from the river to the sea to your heart's desire. Your speech is your responsibility. But beware. This is not 1935. We fight back. And what is good for the goose is good for the gander, as the cliché goes. We will not be silent. You can no longer outshout or drown us in a sea of words and pictures. We do not live in ivory towers anymore. And we also will not be silent in the face of the heinous attacks made in the name of free speech. Do you know why? Because it is our freedom that is at stake. So when does free speech endanger freedom? That is the question. That is the problem. That is the danger. And that is no longer an intellectual problem to be discussed within the pristine walls of ivory towers. It is as real as it gets. If the term Nazi did not teach that to me, and millions of others, October 7th certainly did. And the face of humanity, as we have learned once again, can get very ugly and compete with the devil himself.
Thank you for listening. Our podcast is available in all major podcast directories, on Substack, and on our website, viewfromisrael.com. You can listen to it in your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel. Please do not forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe in your favorite podcast app. Our newsletter is on Substack and comes out approximately 5 times a week. Use the links in our profile here, or go to substack.com and search for The View from Israel. It is totally free. There is no paywall. All one-time or continuing monthly donations are greatly appreciated. Links to our donation page are in Substack, in our newsletters, and in the podcast episode directories. If you wish to advertise with us in our podcast or our newsletter, please contact us at advertise@viewfromisrael.com. Please take note. We are not associated with any political movement or outside institution or company. Our entire budget comes from advertisements in our podcasts and videos, newsletters, memberships, and donations. At The View from Israel, we believe that silence is no longer an option. We are guided by one primary principle. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I hope you have a wonderful day.